everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Truth in Data podcast, where we tackle a different digital forensics issue each week. This week, we're going to talk about something everybody's been waiting for, and that's breaking into DFIR. How do you get into this field? I'm Jessica.
I'm Kim.
I'm Debbie.
I love the fact that you both waited for each other that time.
Well, I was wondering if we were both going to wait so long that then it was an awkward pause.
Well, then we would have had to start all over.
Yeah.
So for anyone who listens to this, we don't cut. There's no edits. We just go. So if you wonder why.
And we don't talk about it beforehand, like who's going to say what first.
Yeah,
so.
we actually just drop the topic, we brainstorm ideas, and then we just go. So we're not, we do prep for the episodes in terms of dropping the topics we want to talk about and the resources and content, but we don't like plan who's going to say what or put too much into that, because we want this to be a natural conversation, just as a bunch of forensicators sitting around the proverbial campfire. So today we're talking about breaking into DFIR, and if there's one question I feel, and tell me if you all are the same, but get asked the most, it's about how to break into digital forensics, mostly from people who I don't know, right? So a lot of people who I already know are in the field, and they're asking technical questions, and we're having technical conversations. But folks who are looking to break into DFIR, and if I was a betting person, I'll say this will probably be our most viewed episode, because these things perpetually, there's always more people getting into the field. So I kind of have a framework I'm going to propose for this particular episode, because there's so much about breaking into DFIR, and that's going to go back to a blog post that we'll put in the notes here, that I wrote on the Hexordia blog about 2 years ago. And not that we're going to follow down that blog post, because a lot of things have changed, but just that I wrote a general pathway to digital forensics, and it had a couple of different topics, and they're all the topics I think we should hit on as a group. So the first one, which is probably where people start, and when I say start here, I guess this is going to be information for both people who are breaking in, who are young and coming straight out of school or looking for what to study in school, but also for people who are transitioning in their careers from another career field. We had a lot of that during the COVID years, which is awesome. I love folks who are moving from other fields. They bring so much. So let's get into the first one, which is, the first topic is education. So what do you all think? And obviously we all come from a time before formal education in DFIR was the thing. What are the educational majors that you think are most applicable to digital forensics?
Well, I think obviously there are a lot of universities now that are offering digital forensics bachelor degrees and master's degrees. And I think a lot of folks, similar to me, where you may have already had a bachelor's degree, and then after you're already in this field, then you're going to, go for your master's and then get it into this more specialized field. So my bachelor's is in computer science. It's not in digital forensics. So I think there are a lot of folks that may appeal to. So as far as education is concerned, though, and, Jessica and I both teach at local universities or at the university. So it's I'm very passionate about those that are within that realm. However, I will say that's not always an option for everybody, especially due to cost. And especially if you're wanting to make that career change, like you said, you may not necessarily have some funding that may be available to you. So that's where I oftentimes say, let's go look for the freebies. If you think this is something you want, let's go look for something that's out there available to you.
So education doesn't need to be particularly a collegiate program. That said, you should have an undergraduate degree, because there are a lot of doors that'll be closed to you if you don't have a bachelor of something. Is that what BS actually stands for? No, I'm joking.
Bachelor of something, yes.
Bachelor of something. It's better than the alternative that people think. That said, there are some fields I would recommend people get a bachelor's in. And to be honest, I don't think digital forensics is the best one to get a bachelor's in. I think it's up there if you're interested specifically in digital forensics. But I've found, and I mean, I've hired folks with bachelor's of science in digital forensics many times, and many of them are excellent. But I do think it's preferable to look at a computer science background or an electrical engineering background, solely because you have a better understanding of computer programming. And I feel like to forensicate computers, you have to understand computers. Digital forensics is fine. I would say that things to avoid that I think sometimes people think are the most appropriate is I would stay away from criminal justice. I would stay away from bachelor's of science in politics or law enforcement, which sometimes are ones that folks who are going in LE look to. I would say if you're looking at going to an LE agency to do digital forensics, a lot of them actually require that it's a CompTIA or an engineering degree. So I would steer people towards computer science and engineering. Programming and understanding computers is a critical skill. There are people who have gotten away with being in the field without it, particularly depending if they've been in the field longer before, not that it was a quote-unquote requirement, but before maybe it was as necessary because we weren't dealing with as large amounts of data. So my recommendation from an education perspective would be that. If you already have a bachelor's and you're a lateral move, and you can get a master's, that's beneficial. Master's degrees. So first off, career programs vary greatly from university to university. I advise people to think about where they're looking to go in this field. If you want to be a teacher or a researcher, look at schools that have teachers or researchers who are researching the things you want to research, because you'll be doing research under those people. If you're looking to be a practitioner, maybe look towards schools where those professionals who are teaching in those courses either have previously or currently are practitioners in the field. If you are looking to if you're looking to build tools, look to schools where the people who are teaching are building tools in that area. And you'll find schools across the world that have people in all those. Definitely look up the professors, look up their research, look them up as practitioners, figure out where they're working and what they're doing. That'll guide you for both undergraduate and master's programs. And that's my biggest advice to traditional education. But if you don't have the funds, that doesn't lock you out, right? Many programs require a degree. I mean, many jobs require a degree flat out. So if you've already got that BS or in something else, training is definitely a way to go. And there are both free and cost training. And I say a good place to start to look for training is D4Diva.
Mm-hmm.
She has a great website that has so many resources. Many of them are free or low cost. And I think it is a great place to start.
But there's plenty of other sources. We have some free classes on the Hexordia website. Cyber5W has free courses. There are lots of different places to look to get formal education or even training courses. And you can start listing training courses on your resume. And I think training is a good lead into the next topic. Certification. Any thoughts?
Well, a few different ones in particular. So it depends on kind of what your specialty or what's going to be your area of focus, or maybe where you're wanting to go work or what you're wanting to do in digital forensics. So, and the reason why I say that is because there are some organizations that they will require you maybe within a certain amount of time to get, like after you start, maybe within 6 months or a year, you have to get your A+ certification, or you may have to get your Net+ certification or your Security+ certification, or they may have something else. So if you kind of have something in mind, go take a look at where it is that you may want to work. And if you've got something at a particular location that you may be able to look at there, maybe some job descriptions or something that they have online, especially in government, they're a little bit easier to find sometimes, or, you know, just searching the LinkedIn archives, you might be able to find some things, but see what it is that some folks are looking for that you want to do. So that way, when you go to them, you've already got that. So that's a good place to start.
I think it's important to note that a lot of certifications are extraordinarily expensive, and that folks should recognize that if a certification is extraordinarily expensive, it is probably because that certifying body expects that the people who they're certifying are already working in the field, and that they're being sent for that certification by their employer, kind of that within the 6 months that you mentioned. My always suggestion to folks I mentor around certifications is exactly what you said. Look at the postings for the jobs you're interested in, the jobs in a geographic area you're interested in, or the sector you're interested in, and see what the minimum requirement is, and then target what will fit the minimum requirement for the broadest period. The reason I'll never recommend a specific one is because I find that these things change over time. Certifications that were popular 3, 5, 10 years ago may have fallen out of favor. Also, organizations might be asking for a certification that's in a specific paid tool, which you're not going to take without having access to the tool. So you're not going, it doesn't make sense to even take their training courses and pay for their tool, because you're not going to spend $10,000, for example, on the tool plus the course, right? That doesn't make sense. But you may be able to find a like certification for something that's free or something that's more based without needing specificity. But the big thing to recognize is a lot of times the expectation is that you get the certification within a certain period of time. But I would say for like contract work, it isn't. If you're taking a job as a contractor, those certifications are usually a minimum requirement by the government. And so the contractor is only going to be able to hire somebody who already has that certification or qualification. So it can vary. Don't get discouraged. But typically, if you have one certification that shows that you can obtain a certification, be it a Sec Plus, which if I was going to give the choice between A Plus or a Sec Plus, I would go with the Sec Plus, only because it's application and getting some computer access that all forensics examiners need in certain situations and settings. Not saying everybody needs this, but there are many settings that require it as a minimum certification, and in terms of price, it might be a little bit of a lower threshold. But that isn't a digital forensics certification. The digital forensics certifications you're going to find are a little bit more of a requirement. And I think this is going to bring me to something it's not really in the pathway, but I think this is really important. Digital forensics is not necessarily an entry-level role. I know a lot of people who are listening may not want to hear that, and some people can get a first job in digital forensics. But a lot of times the path that people take to digital forensics is working in the SOC first, or the Security Operations Center, especially people who are going straight into corporate incident response side of the field. And for that, really a Sec Plus could be the most appropriate for an entry-level SOC job. So, if you start out swinging at DFIR jobs and you're not getting hits, something you might want to do is start looking at SOC roles just to get started. Remember, you can always transition within your organization potentially in the future. I said never always, potentially in the future, or can use that to build up experience to find a role in another organization in 1 to 2 years. But SOC work a lot of times is a precursor to working incident response. And it can give the same gravitas to a straight up digital forensics role. And it'll help build your resume, which I'd say is the next topic.
Yeah, I'll just to kind of echo that when you said, maybe you've transitioned into something else. And, Debbie, I know you've seen this as well. But a lot of times, especially if you're in law enforcement, then you folks may have been an investigator. They may have been a sworn officer prior to being sometimes even voluntold that this is what they're going to do next. Right. So, there may be folks who didn't necessarily have a choice in this career path, who may be looking to, okay, well, if I'm going to have to do it, let me listen to this and see how I should go about this. But then there may be some within those organizations that are like, hey, how do I navigate this so that I can get into that spot? So just wanted to throw that out that, you can come about this from different directions.
Absolutely. I'm sort of listening to this conversation from a different lens as an administrator who sent people to training and trying to determine, I was hiring people who just had, just graduated with a digital forensics degree, or early on it was computer science and things like that. But so hiring people with digital forensics degrees, and then we paid for their certifications, but determining which ones were the best for our needs was always something that was sort of a continuing discussion. And I had to rely on, experts in the field and people in my office and what was up and coming and new in the field and things like that. So I'm listening to it from a different lens, but also you're right, Kim, there are investigators who either want to get into digital forensics, or I know I had, special agents who didn't want to wait on the examiners because there was such a backlog. So they're like, let me learn how to do, this is back in the days of NCASE and those types of things, or let me learn how to do mobile acquisitions and extractions and just look at the basic data for leads only, and then let the exam. So there are a lot of people who are wanting to who get into digital forensics and kind of do it slowly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that migrating in, that's another place you might be trying to get into, is migrating throughout your agency, in which case, displaying a lot of the things we're going to talk about, I think can really, 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 really help you. So on your resume, the thing I try to tell folks is, for your resume, try to make your resume digital forensics forward. So whatever is the most relevant digital forensics information you have is what you want to put in the front. So if you don't have digital forensics education, it's going to vary person to person, but just as a general broad rule, if you have digital forensics education or education that's relevant and not digital forensics experience, start with your education. So maybe your education section saying what degree you have or what degree you're finishing, start with that, and then follow it up with, and this is for somebody who has no experience in the field, and then follow it up with the skills you have. So a skills section. I like to break skills into different types of topics. So I might separate programming languages from forensics tools from forensic skills. So forensic skills might be a mobile acquisition of iOS and Android. Forensics tool might be, Cellebrite or Axiom or GrayKey. I'm just giving examples, or MSAB, whatever. No preference here in this. Or open source tools, of course. This is typically where you get as many tools. And the other part being program languages. So this might be where you're putting Python or PowerShell. Excuse me, I've got a cough. One moment. Oh, one of you could have piped in while I was coughing. I just didn't want to cough in the mic. But then I like to break those things into proficient and familiar, so that you're attributing the correct level of your capability, which tells somebody else a little bit more. So you might be proficient in Autopsy and just familiar with X ways, but whatever that tool combination is. And then for experience, try to make your experience digital forensics forward. So if there's 4 or 5 bullets for your job that you were doing, I don't know, working at a bank, but one of those roles was you were responsible for the IT audit for your unit, listen to that, for your branch, maybe you want to put that to the top of that list of 4, right? So even though it's not the most relevant, the whole idea is to make the most relevant things go to the top. So my big thing is make it digital forensics forward. List relevant coursework. So you don't want to list your English 101 course. Well, maybe that is pertinent. Report writing is really
Writing.
important. So I would list a technical writing class, but not English 101. But you would list your your network forensics course, or you might even list a course in Python programming, or C# or whatever it is you may list a course in. But just don't put your history 101, right? Like, list your relevant coursework. But what's great about that relevant coursework section or training can also include these freebie classes that you're going and taking, right? That you can list them. I would say, in terms of that, there are things that qualify as training and things that don't qualify as training. So, for example, a class qualifies as training. Anything that has a hands-on component qualifies as training. I'm okay with workshops, but I wouldn't put attendance at a webinar or a conference. It's training. Those are more short 1 hour talks. There's no practical element. Kind of my line is there has to be a practical element. There had to be something hands-on involved. I don't know how any of you all feel about that.
No, that makes sense.
I agree. And also, I will say this is that whenever you're putting together details on your resume, make sure that you are prioritizing, like you said, and putting into it, trying to make it match as most that you can for the experience and the education that you have into what is listed on the requirements or the wants or the like to haves or whatever that they have within their description, or what it is that you may be applying to, or maybe in general just wanting to get, because especially and some very sought out applications, processes, they can have tons of applications. And I don't mean tons, I mean, hundreds of applications someone's going to have to go through. And if they can't quickly go through your resume or go through what they're looking at for you and can see just those things quickly of how you meet that criteria, you'll get put into the other pile. So I would just say, make sure that you're able to properly and right out there, right out in front, tell the things that are going to meet that criteria.
Anytime we put out a posting, we usually get 60 to 100 applicants the first day. So sometimes if you're not applying the first day, you might not even be being seen. But in terms of the resume, I think in addition to that, there's nothing wrong with cultivating it to a specific position. And I want to make a call out to two groups of people who will get advice that they have to follow for that purpose, but maybe isn't what they actually want to submit. And so I'll talk first to my fellow veterans. I went through TAP classes. I went through the Transition Assistance Program. I believe it's got a new name now. I got out over 20 years ago, or no, less than 20 years ago. But anyway, around that time. And you're given some very, very specific advice, but what you're not given is good terminology to transition the things you're doing into civilian language. So I recommend you reach out to someone who is a civilian who actively works in the field and sit down with them to help translate your resume from military to civilian. The TAP class will tell you they're doing it. They're doing it thinking of not our types of jobs, and they won't know that the word CellX is mobile exploitation, or mobile exploitation, or CellX means mobile phone forensics, right? There are certain things that are just terminology that's very, very common, and you need to sit down with someone who understands
both worlds.
Both worlds, right. And I do a lot of mentorship of transitioning veterans because it's a near and dear place to my heart, and it's definitely something I see. The other group is those of you who are students who, for scholastic reasons, either a requirement of your program or a requirement of a class, had to do a resume as dictated in a format by your school. Talk to a career professional, talk to someone who hires people, talk to someone who, some of those formats are Again, assuming that you don't. Oh, so here's the thing. I'm assuming that as somebody who's studied computer science or digital forensics, that you're going to do the things that we're going to say later on in here, that you're going to do well, we can talk about internships now. Do internships. If you can get an internship, do an internship, because it counts as career experience, and then you're multiplying your years, right? But even if you're building a home lab, or you're doing your own testing, turn that into content on your resume and make it digital forensics forward. The universities might have you write a resume that's meant for someone who has no experience and isn't digital forensics forward. It's going to talk about your education and the fact that you were a cum laude, which I hope you were. That's great. But it's not the most important thing, because that doesn't tell me anything about your digital forensics experience, right? So just think about that. If you've gotten do the resume for your TAP class, so you pass your TAP class and follow their format. Do your resume for your resume writing, whatever you have at the university, so you pass that. Do it the way they want it, but just understand that that isn't necessarily the best formula for actually gaining employment. Yeah.
I'll say even for folks that are even in law enforcement, same thing. Or if you're coming from anything else that's specialized in intelligence community, whatever that you may have been working in, that you're even doing some type of a transition, befriend someone, ask them to just take a look at it and see if they would just give you, a little bit of guidance, because just tweaking a little bit of your terminology could probably make a difference between, I hate to say this, and almost being a turnoff or seeming as though that you don't necessarily know what you're talking about, when in reality you probably do. Exactly. And because of the terminology being different, it can just come off a little bit differently.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key with something you said. Even if you're in one field and you're transitioning to another, just talking to someone in that sector. All right. So the next one, Debbie and I did a whole episode on this, but we didn't get to hear from you on this, Kim. So I'm going to throw this one to you, which is networking. So go and listen to Debbie and I's thoughts about this. We talked about it for 30 minutes. But Kim, what are your thoughts on networking to break into the digital forensics field?
Well, we are exceptionally fortunate in the world of digital forensics, because everyone is willing to help each other out. And I'll go ahead and say, I haven't listened to their podcast, so I don't know their episode they did, because I might be repeating it all, but I may not. We're very fortunate from that perspective. So follow folks on social media, go to, go search out hashtags that may be of something importance. If there's something that you're interested in, if you're getting to go to a conference, go, because you won't get to see every session. Seek out the people, look ahead of time at the conference program, and figure out who you would want to see or talk to. And sometimes they'll have an app and they'll show you all the attendees, even if it's not someone who's speaking. And you can go find someone even that you may have connected with that posted something cool on social media. And then you can go have a conversation with them about something they did.
It happens all the time, right? We meet people in conferences.
Absolutely. So networking is so incredibly important, and there are so many opportunities for it. And I have said this so many times, and I say this in every class that I teach. I think people get sick of hearing it from me, but digital forensics is such a very sharing community, which is very fortunate for us. But you got to be the ones who's also willing to share. And so if you're, out there, someone who is helping folks or who is in the field working, you need to be helping folks. You need to be helping the person sitting next to you. You need to be helping whomever may come to you with questions or whatever it may be. And people come at this from all different angles from all different perspectives. And that's really, I think, what makes a very interesting, kind of group melting pot that we have of these folks within digital forensics. But definitely depending on each other and looking out towards each other. If you ask someone and they don't know, ask them, do you know somebody who might know? And then they may be able to point you to the other person.
So some places where you can meet people that are low cost, B-sides. There's B-sides in almost every major metropolitan area. It's a security conference, and you will meet security, InfoSec, but also digital forensics people there. HTCIA, the High Tech Crime Investigation Association, they have regional chapters, and if there's one in your area, that's a great place to meet people. And also, since we already talked about classes, your classmates and you are going to rise through the career field together. That means training, that means real classes. People who I did my master's in computer forensics with over a decade ago. I still keep in contact with a lot of those folks. Actually, a lot of us actually teach together now, and but people who I've met in SANS classes, and just make contacts with those people. If you're meeting them in a class, that's a potential somebody to network with. HTCIA, B-Sides, but also don't be afraid of other conferences, especially if there's one that's local and near to you, because there's different conferences all over the world. Also, hacker groups, DEF CON meetups, those are, or even just go on LinkedIn and look for people who are in your geographic area who work in digital forensics, and see if they want to meet up for coffee, or if you can get a couple of people to meet up for coffee. That's always a great opportunity. All right. The next one Kim started to hit on, and that's social media, which is a great place to network, but also a great place to learn. Any thoughts on, I'm on a social media diet, so I'll refrain, but Debbie, any thoughts on social media?
I mean, I sort of live on LinkedIn, so I think that it's a great place to share information and ask questions and start discussions. I actually give a presentation about transitioning from strategies for transitioning from law enforcement to the private sector, and it involves a lot of networking on social media, and a lot of people don't want to do that, or they don't realize the vast community that is actually on social media. I think a lot of people, they sign up for LinkedIn, they make their profile, and then they're like, okay, I guess that's it. That's all, and they don't really take advantage of a lot of the dialogue that happens on LinkedIn. It's not about just promoting yourself. It's not about, it is literally about making connections. I probably talk to a couple of people a week about something that reached out to me through LinkedIn and said, hey, I have this issue, or hey, can you tell me about legislation related to CCM, or hey, can you talk to my daughter about getting into law enforcement? It really is a community.
And the digital forensics community for years was very active in Twitter. When Twitter migrated to X, the digital forensics community migrated to LinkedIn. So not only is it a great place to have conversations and do networking, but it's also a great place to know what's going on in the field. And
Yes.
I think that that's really critical, because people aren't just talking about their careers there. People are talking about new artifacts they're discovering, new
research they've
tools,
done,
new
Yes.
access to how to get into this or how to get into that, which I'll pivot to. Another great resource is everyone needs to be looking at This Week in Forensics by Phil Moore. Phil combines all of the content that the community puts out in blogs each week. He's been doing this for a decade or more. I guess he is more, so I guess it's definitively more, because that's his last name. Never mind. For all of the digital forensics content, it's usually about like 200 articles a week.
Wow.
And he breaks them down, though, into different categories, so you can look for what interests you the most and be reading. And I think it's absolutely critical for both career professionals to be keeping up on what's happening, but also for folks who are in. And of course, those aren't the only ways to keep up. That's the blogs and the written content. You'll also find podcasts. Like if you're listening to this, you should be listening to the countless other podcasts, everything from Digital Forensics Now to episodes of the Forensic Lunch when it happens, to Forensic Survival Podcast. There's so many different things that are out there that you can be listening to, reading, watching, and there's so much opportunity to continually learn. I think that's important.
So you mentioned X, I think, and people sort of migrating to LinkedIn. I know we tried sort of migrating to Blue Sky, I'm not sure that really has taken off, but the digital forensics Discord server is another place
So
where you
that's
should
a huge
where
one.
you should go. It's more like a conversation and like one giant chat,
So
but
did
it's
the
also a place where you should be.
there's over 10,000 people on the Digital
Yeah.
Forensics Discord server. That is absolutely, shout out to Alex Rathman for that. That fantastic resource. There's also, if you do join HTCIA, there is a student membership too that has a listserv. If you wind up getting involved in IASIS, IASIS has a listserv. So there's lots of other places where you can hear what's going on and read what's going on. I would say my biggest thing I'm going to remind people not to do, don't do this on Reddit, don't do it on LinkedIn, don't do it on Discord, don't do it on any of the listservs, is do not, I repeat, do not ask for people, do not ask questions from your homework on those servers. I'm sure that this is a pet peeve of Kim's as well when she sees it, but particularly on the anonymous platforms we see it. So we see it most often in Reddit and on the Digital Forensics Discord server. Everyone in the community knows what you're doing. We all know each other. It's a very small community, and you are only hurting yourself. You are only hurting yourself. Don't do it.
Professor Jessica.
Yeah, you're
Listen to
only
the
hurting
wise one.
yourself. Kim, I know you've seen it too.
Oh yeah, it's mind-boggling every time.
But please use those places to learn and read and communicate, but don't ask people to do your homework. Uh, yeah. So moving on, let's talk about mentorship. Mentorship is important. It's important that you find a mentor. I think people need to remember that mentors go multiple different ways. You can have peer mentors. You can have mentors who are at the next stage in a career, or 2 stages ahead, or 3 stages ahead of where you are today. Anyone who's done anything should be mentoring someone else. If you know the letter A, teach the letter A. If you know the letter B, teach the letter B. So that means that wherever you are, you can be sharing with others. But I feel like mentorship should be at all the levels. You should be mentored. So in all directions, formal and informal. Have mentors who are your formal mentors, maybe through your employment or through programs, but also informal mentors. Maybe people who you never actually have the conversation that you are each other's mentee mentor, but that relationship just exists just by nature of the relationship. But there are places to find mentors formally, right? So like WiCS for women in cybersecurity, like they have a very formal mentorship program. You may have one through your university, and that's a good place. Your teachers may be mentors to you, particularly if you, dare I say it, go to office hours. I just went through my student reviews yesterday, and my student reviews are anonymous, but some students said I was very available because these are the students who came to office hours regularly and weekly, and I helped them with all kinds of things. And then other students said I was never available, and I am sure it is the students who never requested office hours, right? So I do have availability issues because sometimes I'm just not available. I'm traveling. I have work a lot, but I do regular office hours, right? So take advantage of those office hours, because guess what? The students who came to office hours are the ones I remember, and they're the ones who you develop a relationship with, and then they're the ones who you wind up mentoring later throughout your career. So
that's also networking.
It is. Office hours is networking. And here's the thing.
It is.
You don't have to go to office hours because you have something wrong. Right? Like, you don't think that office hours are only for the people who don't understand the questions. Because you know what? Sometimes a student will come to me. I set up my office hours in 15-minute increments, right? I meet with students for 15 minutes at a time. And I'm just giving you my personal example. So if I'm meeting with a student for 15 minutes and their question is solved in 3, I say, you know what, while you're here, tell me a bit about you, because how else can I help you? And that how else I can help you is not about the assignment or the research or whatever it is. Does that make sense? Like,
It makes a lot of sense.
It makes total sense. Yeah. I have one student who every time she stayed after class, every single time, she showed up every single time, and she ended up, I think she missed like 3 points the entire semester. And she knew all that she was doing fine, but she stayed because she wanted to hear what I said to someone else, or she wanted to, she wanted the little extra, or she wanted to talk to me for just a few minutes afterward.
The students who stay after class, like even virtual classes, students who stay after class, this is really tips for students in classes. Go to office hours and stay after class. Even the ones who don't have a question but say, hey, I'm just sticking around to hear the other questions, I think they learn so much more, and then they sometimes have a question after they hear that question, because we can't remember or give everything just in the period. And you know, the questions that people ask really, you can learn more from the way somebody asks a question, if that makes sense, because it shows how they were interpreting what was delivered, or how they're seeing it in their worldview, and then you can help them get it better. Anyway, always go to the office hours, stay after class. I know that means more of a time commitment, but it will help you, and that is a way to set up for your instructor to be your mentor in the future, because there are definitely plenty of students that I've had. Heck, I mean, there are employees at Hexordia who were former students, and guess what? They were the students who came for office hours and stayed after, and then had other jobs, and then when I had openings, I reached out to them because I knew they had the skills, the aptitude, the curiosity, the interest. See, that's it. That's exactly it, Debbie. The intellectual curiosity to figure out what's going on. And also, I actually knew them, right? When you're teaching a lot of students, you don't necessarily develop, and you're teaching hundreds of students a year, you don't necessarily remember everyone. And some of those folks, like I've had past students who were the ones who stayed for office hours, who and everything else, who were doing amazing stuff in the field, and who I go and ask questions to. And you're right, because they're the curious, they're the ones that. Anyway, next up, actually applying for roles. All right, I'll give my 2 cents on this. Just apply. If you think you don't qualify for the role, just apply. It does. You can only win the battles you enter. You can never win a challenge you don't participate in. So if you don't apply, there's no option. If you apply for a job and you don't get it, you're no worse off. Yes, did it maybe take you some time to prepare and do the application? Yes. And that's all practice and building muscle memory. Just apply. I will tell you, there are some people out there who will apply for everything, and there are some people who will apply for nothing. It is a numbers game. Now, when you apply for something, after you apply, you need to do one of 2 things. Okay? First off, you need to have built that LinkedIn, right? Like that LinkedIn is a resume. It needs to mirror your resume. You need to be out there. People are vibe checking you when you apply. They're going to go look at your LinkedIn. So you need to go look at your LinkedIn and your connections. You need to connect to people and see if anyone you're connected to works where you just applied. And if you're close enough to be connected to them, and you don't have to be close to be connected to somebody, and you dropped an application, again, you never can win the fights you don't enter, right? If you don't submit to the challenge, you can never win it. If you applied for ABC Corp and you look and you're LinkedIn connected to somebody at ABC Corp, you should be sending them a DM saying, hey, I'm so glad that we're connected. I've been so, whatever, talk to them about something they wrote or something. I just dropped an application for the blank and blank role at such and such a location with your org, and then share the link to the job posting. That will help you more than anything, because like I said, 60 to 100 people are dropping their resume the first day. Not all those people are getting interviews. Anything you can do to set yourself for the interview. Now, let's say you don't know somebody there, but you have a mentor. Now I'm saying only do this with your mentor. You have a mentor or mentors. Check your mentor's connections at that location, and then reach out to your mentor and see if they're able. You tell that your mentor, you go, hey, Kim's my mentor. Hey Kim, I just applied for a job at ABC Corp. Specifically, this role, share the link, same thing you did before. I see that you're connected to Debbie at ABC Corp. Would you mind reaching out to Debbie and letting her know I applied? That's it. Do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's like my biggest tip.
I think that's great.
Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to teach my own college graduates this as well, my own personal college graduates.
You mean your children? You mean
yes, my children.
Your offspring.
And they're kind of iffy on it, so we're working on that.
Don't be iffy on it. It's
yes.
a numbers game. Debbie's children.
Agreed.
Debbie's
yes.
children. If you're listening, Debbie's offspring. Don't be iffy on that. I'm not your mama, so listen to me.
Exactly, because mom doesn't know anything.
I have teenage children myself. I get it.
So, it is, that is a great way, though, to reach out to the hiring manager or someone in that company, because many of them, a lot of times you go into, especially if it's a large corporation or a large agency, you're going into sort of a stack of, and sometimes they're using AI algorithms to weed through some of the applications or the resumes. And just simply someone saying, hey, I know this person, or hey, give this person, some people you have to have a referral in order to get to the hiring manager.
Yep.
And that's all you're looking for is a connection, a introduction. And really, you're just looking to get the interview. Then it's on you. Then you are just looking to get to the interview process. And that's one way that people get to the interview process.
I can't tell you how many people that we've ended up interviewing that on paper you were like, okay, they checked the boxes, but I'm not sure. And you end up interviewing them anyway. And then this would be my next thing to say, which I don't think this is like the next step of this. I'll say this, like the little B part to that is prepping for your interview is knowing what you're walking into, knowing about the role, but not acting like that you know more than you do, being very open and honest about what you do and don't know. And as great as you've made your resume and everything look, and you've got these connections and everything else, you have to be completely 100% honest about everything and what you do know. The other part of that is that be open and honest about how much you want to do that job, which I think also goes along with how do you get started? You get started with the passion to do it. That's how you get started. And you need to let the folks that you are interviewing see that. Yep. To explain to them why that job means something to you. Why do you want to do this job? And it just make it very, I'm not trying to say be all sappy, but be very honest about why you want to do it. Because look, if you listen to any of our podcasts, you probably already heard this is a difficult job. This isn't easy. So it's very rewarding, but you need to let folks know why you're willing to put in that effort and that legwork in order to be able to make this career work for you. It's more than a job. It's a career for you.
So that brings us to another topic, which is share and contribute. And I want to be really clear that when we say share and contribute, you do not have to have completed getting a job or working in the field to be sharing and contributing. This is where you are doing your own research. Something, if you take any class with me, or half of my presentations, you'll hear me say there are 6 million apps out there between Google Play and the Apple App Store. There's about very generously, 1,000 supported apps. That means there are millions of things for you to research and test and put out content on. And if you do that, you demonstrate a couple of things. A, oh my gosh, you're contributing to the community and somebody else might need it. That's probably the most important one. But also you're showing literally that you can do the work. So you're showing aptitude. You're showing that you can write. And I think we've all been through having examiners who could examine but couldn't articulate that in writing. And that's actually the product that we produce as our reports. And then the third thing is that you are demonstrating that something else, that gumption, that passion that Kim was just
Initiative.
talking about,
Yeah.
your interest. And the bonus is when someone interviews you, they're more likely going to ask you about something you really know because they're going to ask you about your blog. And it gives you a resume line item, right? But so there's just always so much good that can come from it. And even better if you are able to code whatever you learn and put it into an open source project. And then people can actually look at your code. And then you get to demonstrate yet you have another skill that's valuable. But it also could be, we do, the last several years, we've built the CTFs for the Magnet User Summit. So something you could be doing is blogging your solves to the CTFs, which is a good way of learning, and you're sharing it. And some people do these in videos, and some people do these in blog posts, but the whole idea is just getting it out there and showing and sharing. Again, that whole, if you know how to the letter A, share the letter A. If you know the letter B, share the letter B. Yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on sharing and contributing?
I just think that it is a fantastic way for you to show that you have done something extra, and that may set you apart.
Yeah.
And
I think it does set people apart.
Yes. And there's
I think
competition.
it does.
There's stiff competition for these roles. And if you do write that blog or that video, send it to Fillmore at This Week in Forensics. He'll include it so that other people can find your work. If you make a tool, share it with Kevin Pagano for inclusion in the Forensic Start Me page. What another great resource people can go to. So just share it. All right, final thoughts on breaking into DFIR.
I think you mentioned Kevin Pagano's page, which I think is a great thing for folks to do because he has listed there many resources and a lot of them are free. And that's a great place. Go learn about a lot of these tools. I mean, do these things on your own. Go to, download some of these, images that are out there for the community and then process them with some of these parsers or some of these other tools that are out there. Do these extra things and, create a blog and write a thing about, well, I use this tool to do that. It doesn't even necessarily have to be groundbreaking or white paper worthy. Just go put it out there. Just the fact that you did it, because when folks go to look at your LinkedIn or whatever on social media that you're putting it on, they're going to see this record of all these things that you've done and how cool that it was that you used these tools.
Compare and contrast your experience with some tools versus the data sets that you download from either the Digital Corpora or the Digital Forensics Reference data set. Create a data set, right? Like anything. Just do something so that you learn and then share it. Sorry, that was mine. Go, Debbie. Yours.
No, I mean, I think the community is so welcoming. And I think if you're, especially for students, or if you are making a transition, or you're an investigator that wants to, add to your skill set, I think that the community is so welcoming that all you have to do is log on, watch, and ask questions, join in, where you feel comfortable, and you will most definitely be accepted. You shouldn't be shy.
I want to say one last thing. I always tell students that you need to come to work every day, being willing to learn something new every day and being willing to share what you learned every day with those around you. And whether it be online or whether it just be the people sitting next to you. But if you are not willing to share that with the folks around you, they aren't going to like you very much, and you aren't going to be a very good team player. And this is probably going to be a good career for you. So I suggest share, and learn.
Yeah, and I guess my last thing is this is a field that you could go a mile wide, but if you pick something and just dig deep into that thing to learn, even if it doesn't wind up being the thing you do, but you dig deep into one thing and focus on digging deep into that one thing and what you share, the world is your oyster. Because if you can dig deep into one thing, you can dig deep into anything. So, well, Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Truth in Data podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.